All right. I'm so excited. Here we are for episode 2 of How to Deal with Change and Uncertainty. And I'm so excited that Liz Goulder is joining me today. She's a wonderful person who does a lot of amazing work. Her thing is embodied spiritual energy coaching and intuitive guidance and support. And she's amazing. So, this is going to be a chat between me and her, and it's going to be very informal, very intimate. So it's not necessarily a traditional interview, but I just want us to chat a little bit about like how do you deal with what's been going on in terms of uncertainty and change, and how things are shifting energetically on our planet, in our society, and how do you and I deal with something like that, right? And so it's just sort of like a conversation between you and I. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm an astrologer coach, Sonja Francis, and I do just that, astrology and coaching. So anybody who would like to learn more about astrology, or anybody who would like to get a reading or a coaching session, that's what I do. And I think we both are sort of like in the same alignment in terms of like wanting to empower people with our work, right? I think I feel that way,
Definitely.
you feel that way. So tell me a little bit about what the embodied spiritual energy coaching is for those of you who don't know you.
So I'm still in transition. So for me, on the kind of my own identity in terms of being in service, I'm still in transition. It was a shock to me to find out that I was intuitive and psychic and
Right.
spiritual,
'Cause you were a
So
lawyer, right? Were you a lawyer?
yeah, so 2015 was the culmination point for me where the wheels came off my old life.
Hmm.
And I embarked, on a spiritual awakening. Like it literally was dark night of the soul, can't go forwards, and that's what's been so interesting for me to reflect on what's happened since, say, 2020,
Yeah.
is I feel like it's the collective experience. And the last few years have been intense, but my last 6 years have been intense. And there have been moments where I've actually now been able to give thanks for sort of being initiated back in
Earlier on.
2015.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my world fell apart. I lost my job. I lost my identity. I mean, I walked away from my job, but I lost my identity. I literally surrendered everything from our Western societal conditioning. I was an atheist. I was dead inside and trying to make it work with the sort of material gods and goddesses that we worship. And suddenly I found myself in India in an ashram, just with all of my hidden emotions, hidden sensitivities, hidden wounds, hidden stories from this lifetime, just brimming at the surface. And ever since then, it's been about embodying the spiritual philosophy and the spiritual understanding that I am love, I'm from love, I deserve love, and I'm good enough to receive love.
Yes.
And for
Amen to that.
someone, yeah, and I think that's ultimately the cure or the band-aid that we're all looking for. It is to have love reflected from the outside world and our loved ones, but ultimately we can only receive that as a reflection when we have filled ourselves up with love.
Yeah.
And the healing journey I've been on in finding love through the divine,
Yeah.
particularly as a single woman in her now late 30s,
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be here and be fulfilled and in love, and yeah, so it's been a journey for me in terms of how do you love yourself? How do you love yourself when you make mistakes? How do you love yourself when things have gone, for want of a better expression, tits up? Like,
Yeah.
how do you keep showing up and loving
And also
yourself
I feel like
and
there's
loving
not a
people
lot of
around you?
I also feel like there's not a lot of great modeling that we experience in childhood, right? So how do you love yourself? I mean, usually you would look to your parents or to peers or teachers, to see like how do other people love themselves and how can I do it, right? But we don't have a lot of good role models growing up with that. I mean, I didn't necessarily, and I don't know if you did, but I think a lot of people don't have that, and so it's difficult to learn that on your own, right? And it takes time,
Yeah.
and it actually takes a lot of introspective, like going within and really getting in touch with yourself, right?
Yeah, who you are authentically from within,
Yeah.
as opposed to I'm going to model my behaviors based on what I've seen represented through parents, through society. Yeah.
Or who we should be out there in the world, right? Like, because we always try to look outside of ourselves and look to see, like, how are other people doing things? So how do I fit into that, right? But really, it's not about that. It's more about how do I fit into me, and how do I connect with me, right?
Yeah, what did I come here to experience and express? That's what through working with you is the soul's journey. Everyone's is unique.
Yes.
And you can try and get in someone else's lane, but you're only going to keep crashing or exhausting yourself. For me, like there are people who are on a soul's evolution in this lifetime to be lawyers, and it is their highest excitement, and they are doing good in the world or less good. I'm not going to get into good and bad and the judgments and the shoulds, but there are people fulfilling their life's purpose and their soul's journey and they fit in the boxes of our programmings. And then there's people like us who are encouraged pleasantly or unpleasantly to find their own self-expression, and and then to hold that whilst the chaos of the world continues to get louder, when people are triggered, I guess, right now in terms of safety. And there's safety in numbers, there's safety in conforming, there's safety in following rules, there's safety in doing what an authority tells you to do. So unless you sort of had to question authority before, or found yourself not working within the confines of the system or the matrix, suddenly you're just like, you don't know which way is up. And you have to know yourself. You have to come back to your authentic self.
You have to understand.
What are your beliefs?
Yeah, core.
Yeah, what are your value systems? Yeah, what's your truth? And your truth is messy, and it can be wrong according to other people. But it's, as long as you know that and you're happy to honor that for yourself. Again, it's not about screaming and putting your truth in someone else's face either, but it is just to stay true to your experience of it.
Yourself. Yeah. And that's not easy to do, right? I mean, and I think that, you went through this in 2015 already, but I think a lot of people are going through this right now, in last year and this year, where they're really needing to shift who they are because they are no longer fitting with what's happening outside of themselves, right? And also I think there's so much information out there these days, so much information that's coming through and in through social media, the news, everywhere, right? Like you name it, it's there, right? People just talking. And so how do you really discern what kind of information you want to take in? And I think that's also a very personal journey, because if there's information that comes in that you're just taking in because it's there, but you're not actually looking at it and you're not questioning it and you're not trying to see, does that resonate with my own direct experience? Not what I should be experiencing, but what my direct experience, right? I think that's so important these days. And of course, we just had the eclipse in, Sagittarius, Gemini. So that energy field is very much about like what information comes in and what do I take on and what do I, how do I use the energy and how do I connect it to myself? Is it in alignment? Yeah. Does it resonate? So one of the things that I always ask people is like, how do you deal with some of these changes that are currently happening on this energetic level, on like a physical, mental, and emotional level? Because I think those three levels are sort of like, we don't want to disconnect ourselves, right, from the physical, from the emotional, or from the mental. They're all intertwined with each other. They all play with each other. One impacts the other, right? I feel like. So what are some of the things that you've been doing this past year that have supported you on a physical, emotional, or mental level?
So for me, what's been a huge theme that's come through in my healing journey, I've been on a shadow work, like intense healing journey for the last 6 years. So, I'm good with getting to grips with myself, with my stories, but what's come up, and I wasn't necessarily expecting it, was reparenting and the deeper healing of the inner child. And I feel like that really does answer the aspects you're talking about, because physical, like play, rest, have a nap, but do
Right.
something creative, get out in nature. So the playful movement, as opposed to, I used to be very much in masculine energy. Well, I would say very, very much in toxic masculine energy, because masculine energy gets a bad name these days too. But in terms of our exercise regime and stress release, quite often when we're pushed, we're under pressure, we can choose to do activities that actually put our bodies and our systems under more pressure. Yes. So it's having, it's taking a step back and starting to say, listen to your body. What do you need from me? And maybe it is to go for a big hard fast run. Maybe it's to rest. Maybe it's to do a yoga nidra. Maybe it's to just, do free dancing and free expression, or just stand and look at the stars or the sky. So for me, I've had to dip into things that I didn't think would come back. So in the first lockdown here in 2020, I was meditating, I was yogaing, I was like, yeah, I can do this. I've got my tools. But because of the level of intensity that was happening in the collective energy, and also at the time I wasn't living alone, I was like, I need more, like there's another step that I need to take to help me release and come back to center. So I started running again, because I felt like I needed that kind of faster, harder paced exercise and adrenaline release to just let me pump out some steam. So for me, there's no judgments around this, but having that inner child perspective of, a child that just goes running because it's wild and free, as opposed to I must be on this regime and, do it as a
not like I have
thing.
to do this every day. It's more like you're being called, your body is calling you to go running, right? So that we learn to kind of like, and that's something that I've had to learn as well, because I was brought up with so much structure in my life, because I'm from Austria originally, and Germanic people, they like to structure everything, and everything has to be sort of like a certain way. And
the British are similar, dear.
The British are similar. Okay. So I was brought up that way, and so I had to really retrain myself to listen to my body more, to listen to when is it appropriate for me to exercise, and when is it appropriate for me to rest, and what kind of level of exercise does my body need in any given moment, right, or any given day. And I think really being able to listen to yourself in that way is really powerful, because then you don't overstretch yourself, and you give your body exactly what it needs any given moment. And you are sort of like in harmony then with yourself, right? In harmony with your physical body, at least, right? And probably also with your emotional body. Did you freeze?
And it's the right medicine.
Oh, okay. I think you just froze for a second, but it's okay. You're back. Well, it is Mercury retrograde too, right? So we have to consider that as well, that we might have a little bit of technological like ups and downs that comes with the territory. But so I like what you said about the whole physical aspect of things, to just do it with your in accordance with your inner child energy, right? Because I think the inner child, the happy inner child, what I call the happy inner child, is very good at being authentic and in tune with what's required in the moment, right? And it's our adult energy that sort of like tries to, sometimes get a little bit too rigid about certain things, or tries to get a little bit too pushy, especially the not so helpful masculine part of ourselves, right? And since we live in a masculine dominated society in the Western world, I think most of us kind of struggle with finding that balance, right? Finding that masculine, feminine balance. And I think that's something that I've personally been working on since 2012, in very consciously, maybe already before then a little bit, but most consciously since 2012. But I've really felt the sense of like needing to realign my inner feminine, with my inner masculine. Because I know how to be active, I know how to get things done, I know how to, go out there in the world, but sometimes the going within and the taking a pause and the not doing anything, right, and being comfortable with that, that I was not so familiar with, quite honestly, like, because that's not how I was raised. I was raised always like, go, 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 come on, let's do this, let's accomplish that. And why are you slacking? Like that was my upbringing. So it was literally constantly like, it was this very masculine driven, like go, go, go.
Well, we're told to fix things. You've got to fix ourselves. We've got to find the solution.
Yes.
And I think what the last couple of years have been showing people is this huge pause button in some respects for those of us that have had a relatively privileged experience through, let's face it, one of the most severe social and economic, never mind health-wise, experiences of humanity in our recent memories. But we've had a pause put on how we're used to fixing our boredom, fixing our restlessness, fixing our drives, our desires. Yeah. And for me, even with like my spiritual toolkit with yoga, meditation, everything that I've been doing for the last 6 years, I needed to open it out, almost widen the toolbox and be like, okay, what can I do to go a little deeper, to go a little further? And I think that's what people are learning, is that we're not able sometimes to fix everything, and nor are we meant to. And it's what salve or support and love you can bring to yourself when everything has literally been taken out of your control, because it is actually always out of your control. And that's something that I was humbled with, back in 2015, and still, every day you're just thinking, right, do I have what I need now? What can I do for myself now?
Yes. And that's what I always say too, is like, focus on what you have influence over, or focus on what you have control over, because there's so many things that we don't have control over. And I'm still struggling with that too, by the way. I mean, I'm not that I'm doing it perfectly all the time, but I do kind of like, it helps to remind myself, it helps to remind myself, do I have control over this, or do I have actual influence over this? And if the answer is no, I will just energetically at least pull back. I will energetically pull back from it and lean back from it and be like, okay, so what can I actually focus on right now that would bring me even just this much more space, or this much more happiness, or this much more, of a heart opening, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting because it's all mental health awareness as well, because the mind control is what can, so I have been prone to anxiety. It's definitely something that's in my makeup. Yes. And for me, there is that thing of, well, what can I control? What can I fix? And how can I ground and soothe myself? Yeah. And for me, there was a point in the UK. So just before Christmas, the government put us back into a lockdown and restricted travel. And I had a friend who was meant to be coming to spend Christmas with me. And it was a really stressful, emotional experience, because everybody's just highly strung anyway, because they've been living on adrenaline since, March 2020, I suppose, when it really kicked off. Yeah. And then I was like watching, my emotional well-being, my reactions, and allowing my emotions to come up, because again, I've learned that you've got to honor and leave space for your emotions, especially when things are intense. And then I was like, well, hang on a minute. I can't control the travel arrangements. I can't control what happens on Christmas Day, but I can, in this moment, decide how I want to feel and how I want to respond and react. And I ended up just saying, I have a choice here. I could get a blanket, go and feel sorry for myself on the sofa. And I have done that in the last couple of years. Again, I'm not like you. You're not ever fixing yourself from the human experience. No. There just isn't. We're here to ride the waves, and sometimes it's on the sofa with chocolate and pizza, and you don't get out for 2 days if you're privileged enough not to have kids to keep alive. But I was like, no, I'm going to have a dance party. I'm going to celebrate, that I am in control of how I, can spend this next 10 minutes, and I'm not going to get angry at the TV or keep watching the news and hope that it changes. I'm going to do something that helps me release my emotions and make me feel good. Yeah. And then you just get on with it. But there's been peak experiences for people.
Yeah. I love that you said about the news, that you don't focus on the news, but you focus on what you can do for the next 10 minutes. And that's something I've practiced over the last 15 years already, is just not focusing on the news, but focusing on my direct experience that I have right in front of me. And it doesn't mean that that information is not important. It doesn't mean that we don't want to know what goes on out there in the world. But I think it's important to recognize, how do we take in this information that lets us know what's going on out there, and what do we do with that information? Because often, it's my experience that often when I see the news, there's an immediate emotional impact to me. And I think it's, especially in America, I mean, I don't know how the news is in England. I think it's a little bit different in Austria. It's a little bit more like neutral in Austria, how they deliver the news. But here in America, the news is very, there's an emotional component to it that they want you to feel, and that they want you to pull you in so that you keep watching, right? And I've noticed that, you know, when I used to watch the news here, it would always pull me in emotionally. And then my mind would start to go into overdrive of like, how can I fix my emotion that I'm feeling right now? And then the mind goes into fixing mode. And then you're in this like loop, you know, and how do you get out of that loop? And that loop creates anxiety. So it's not a very good loop to be in, to be perfectly honest. And it doesn't fix anything really anyways, because what are you going to do about something that happens, you know, in California? What are you going to do about something that happens in the Middle East? You know, I mean, there's nothing to be done about that. And you know, yes, we can be compassionate towards tragedy, but we also need to be compassionate towards ourselves, you know, as we're witnessing that certain tragedy, right? So the compassion towards ourselves is number one, and really, really important. And that's something I had to learn sort of like the long way around, in a sense. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I found personally, and again, I don't say what I do is right or wrong for anybody else other than me. It's just an evolving experience. But, you know, everything has got bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, and anybody selling anything, whether it's news or information or a social media page, they're doing it to make money. So they need attention. They need to get your attention, and they need to keep your attention. Nothing I'm saying is revolutionary, but I do think people have forgotten that, because, you know, you think about the access from a mobile phone. Was I 13 when mobile phones came out, and it was literally a device that you could call people from. And now, you know, everything is up. There's information on everything all of the time. I have turned off the news on my mobile phone. It is a choice I make to go and look up the news. It is not something that is popping up with alerts to tell me everything that's going on everywhere, because I decided, once I had taken a retreat back from the noise of my over-informed life as a lawyer, you have to be informed, you've got to be educated and, you know, up with things. But then I was like, hang on a minute. For someone with my sensitivities, with my emotional led experiences, how far into this do I need to go to be informed? And as things have you know, escalated over the last year and 18 months, I've withdrawn even more. You know, I've left social media because I am choosing where I want to spend my time, but more importantly, what's good for my well-being. And I'm not going to be in these, you know, arenas where people are basically behaving badly. Not always. Social media is what you make of it, but it's like the wild, wild west, you know? And I was like, with the high volume information of overdrive that we're in across all spectrums of life experience right now, I need to take a step back, because taking care of my well-being, so I can be there for people who rely on me or who want to be with me.
Right? Like my well-being, your well-being, like what is that? What does that mean? And how do we take care of that? Right? Because it's going to be different for every person. Nobody's going to have exactly the same ability to take care of themselves, and things might work for certain people that don't work for other people. But you yourself know what works for you and what's good for your well-being if you really listen and if you really tune in with yourself, right? I mean, that's something we can do and we can learn. It just, sometimes it takes a little time to get used to listening to yourself, right? I mean, it's taken me years to get better, you know?
But it's still
And I'm still
Yes,
learning.
we're not taught to operate from the inside out.
Right.
We all are. We always will. But that's what I think life experience is about, you know. And this is back to the inner child and the reparenting.
Yeah.
You might have grown up, you and I are sat here in adult women bodies, you know, and you go out in the street and you think, oh, they've got their shit together because they're grown-ass women and they know what they're doing. But we're also carrying, you know, aspects of ourselves that are still living and breathing from things that have happened all of our lifetimes. And we are responsible for that.
Yes.
I'm just watching my internet. And that's the fundamental piece with all of this that I've learned is we're all going to react differently. We've all got different beliefs. We've all got different truths. We've all got different fears, and we've all got different ways of responding and keeping ourselves safe.
Different trauma.
I can't. I'm not here to do anything other than keep true to me and mine. And that's the same with everybody else.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more on that. Yeah. And I mean, everybody will do what they can, right? I mean, that's the other thing too, is I've learned that, you know, my husband, for example, you know, like he takes care of himself the best way he knows how to, and I do it my way, and our ways are very different, and we operate on very different levels when it comes to, you know, self-care, you know, or taking care of our well-being. And, you know, I mean, the only thing I can say is that what I've noticed is that things have consequences, right? Like if you don't take care of your own well-being, eventually there will be a consequence to that, right? And it might not be an immediate consequence, right? And the younger you are, the longer it will take to really see the consequence. But the older you get, the shorter the sequences of like seeing the consequence, right? Because your body changes, and as you get into your 40s, you know, your body's not going to be as quickly to bounce back as it did in your 20s or early 30s, right? And when you get in your 50s, you know, something slows down, right? So there are different processes for different age groups as well. And I think as we get older, we notice that, you know, oh, wait a second, I actually have to pay more attention now because there is greater consequences to what I'm doing. And so I just want to encourage anybody who's watching this who's younger, because I never believed it when I was in my 20s, you know, I would always be like, I'm fine, you know, like it's all good, like, because you bounce back so quickly. But if you are in your 20s right now, you know, like just know that even though you might not have immediate consequences, there's going to be consequences down the line. So you might as well already start now to take care of your well-being, because that means you will live way better, way longer. Because the thing is, with living, right? It's not just that we want to get to be old and we want to get to live as long as possible. We want to be well, right? I mean, I don't want to be in my 80s and 90s and not feel good, right? I want to be in my 80s and 90s and I want to feel like I feel now, right? Which, who knows if that's going to happen, but I want to do my best to get to a healthy
still accessing life.
Still accessing life, exactly. Still having my independence, still being able to enjoy.
This is what happens when you move to the rural part of England. Okay, so I'll go on with what I was going to say is embodied spiritual energy to me, it's that wisdom and understanding that your body's a vehicle to get you through your life. It's not an obstacle. It's not something to be used up or abused or exhausted. It's to be loved and worshipped and respected as the vessel that it is for this life experience. I mean, it's so obvious when you stop and think about it. But when I, you know, on the spiritual discovery, there's a lot of bypassing, there's a lot of toxic love and light, and there's a lot of escapism, you know, with wanting to reach dimensions outside of this body, to have the outer worldly experiences, which I believe are part of a possible integrated human experience, but not at the cost of embodiment, you know. And for me, my personal healing journey has been through the wisdom of integrating spiritual principles and spiritual philosophy, coming back to how you love yourself into this body and how I treat it in every day. And just to the point you're making about the 20-year-olds out there, this is for them and for any age. the only way you're going to know how to take care of your body in any given moment is when you start to cultivate a direct relationship with it. So carving out a meditation or a stillness practice where you listen to yourself. And initially for me, it was the crazy monkey mind and all of the limiting beliefs. And, you know, meditation has morphed for me over the last 6 years. But if you want longevity, if you want peace, if you want to understand who you are as a unique aspect of everything and how to best care for yourself, you need to start that dialogue and that relationship. And the sooner the better. You know, it's never too late to begin again with yourself.
Oh yeah, and that's a good point too, right? Like even if you're in your 50s or 60s right now, you know, like it's never too late to start fresh, right? It's never too late to get in touch with that communion with yourself, you know, with your listening to your body, listening to your feeling body. And actually that's something I do want to talk to you about, because I feel like the emotional part of things usually does get left out a little bit. Like we do focus very often on the mental and on the physical, but the emotional is something that we don't very often focus on. And that's been I have to say, for me personally, the emotional journey has been the most difficult one of all of them, because mentally I'm pretty sharp, physically I'm pretty fit. So that's never been like a huge issue for me. But emotionally, because there was no support growing up on an emotional level, and there was also in the social construct that I grew up in, emotional issues were not really addressed or were not really seen as important or serious. I've always thought of my emotions or my emotional body as inferior. And I've always thought of it as like a curse almost, like it's a curse to me. Like if only I didn't feel as much as I'm feeling, I would just be fine, you know?
Yes. I've said that too.
Yeah, that's kind of how I grew up. And I didn't understand it. I didn't know what to do with it all, you know, because emotions can be so overwhelming, and especially as a woman sometimes, you know, when you go through your cycles and you you have these ups and downs, with the now what's it connected to, the now hormones, with the hormonal, you know, ups and downs, right? It's this like, it's, if nobody ever teaches you and tells you, you know, that this is normal and that this is part of, you know, the female experience, and that it's okay to feel, and it's okay to have these feelings, and that it's actually beautiful to have these feelings, right? You know, how do we embrace that more when we don't know, right? And that's been a really long journey for me, and I've only recently gotten to a place, literally just like a year ago maybe, or 2 years ago in 2019 I think, where I've gotten to a place of more peace with my emotional body, and it's yeah, so I just wanted to ask you, like, because I know you're kind of an emotional being as well. We all are emotional beings, but you know, I know that you have similar, you know, concerns that I have with that. So I was just wondering, like, what are some of the things that you've discovered for yourself in terms of taking care of that emotional body?
Yeah, firstly, I mean, when you were speaking, the term emotional being is what I was thinking. We are all emotional beings.
Right.
So whilst we're, you know, taught how we are in this body, and again, we're not taught that we're spiritual, that we're emotional, that we're energy in movement, energy in emotion. I love that phrase that's always bandied around. For me, I think particularly as a woman, there's been a lot of gaslighting of emotions and sensitivity in our toxic masculine energy dominated world. You know, like if you were treated badly at the workplace, you know, I had quite a high intense job at times where clients could behave badly or colleagues. And as a woman, you know, you're not allowed to cry or have an emotional reaction because it's just business, you know. And it's like, well, is it? Because I am a a being that's having this experience, and I'm now being told that any, you know, my response isn't welcome. And that happens to us through our upbringings as well. Yes. With the best loving parents in the world, they were also raised, be quiet, be seen, be, you know, don't be heard, right. You know, follow authority and don't express yourself, right. For good and for bad. So my spiritual and self-exploration journey has had to come to the realization that I had numbed my emotional experiences out. I had suffered pain in my childhood to the extent, because I'm also sensitive, which has now got a different glow to it, but I was numbing out because I didn't want to feel any more pain. And then when things reached a crescendo, there was like a 3-year period in my life, so 2012, maybe 2013 to 2015, and everything, I just remember saying to myself, I don't want to cry anymore. I don't want to feel anymore. Like, I just can't bear to engage with this stuff anymore. And I think that's what a lot of people are feeling now, is it's overwhelmed. So they just numb out. And if you think about how we're raised, it's socially acceptable to go and, you know, drink yourself unconscious, to, you know, and I'm not judging. I use all of the recreational things that everybody else does. You know, they're crutches, but it's the awareness that I've got now. Like, oh, okay, I'm feeling emotional and vulnerable, and I'm using this to get me through it. So a gin and tonic on a Friday, you know, in one of the heavy lockdown periods, that was a tool that I used to break up the mundanity, to break up the pressure, and to say, I'm going to have an alcoholic drink to help me relax, and I'm going to enjoy it. And that was me, you know, doing that in moderation, but also without judgment that alcohol is a toxin and it's not going to make me feel great if I have 3 gin and tonics and then wake up the next morning, you know. So that's my personal, I'm not a big drinker. But again, it's the emotion around it. Like, we have comfort food, you know, and sometimes
sugar,
especially around women and hormones, chocolate, carbs for me, crisps. Like, there is a day of the month where I will just be like, I'm going to eat the junk food today, because that's actually what I'm craving and it's nourishing me. So I'm doing it with awareness that it's not food that I put in my body every day, but there's a nourishment and a satisfaction and maybe a naughtiness and a, you know, that kind of being bad, you know, feeling, which feels good, you know, to be like, yeah, I'm going to indulge, I'm going to eat a big bag of crisps and dip and lie on the sofa and watch a film. So with the emotional layer, it's about awareness of what your emotions are feeling, and it's allowing them to be present, and it's not reacting and taking out on other people. So, you know, anger, again, there's been a lot to be angry about. Where are people releasing their anger? You know, I had a lot of anger from stuff that happened in my life that I was releasing back in 2017. I did lots of shadow work and anger release work. And I was like, this energy was in my system, and it's a toxic energy that's, you know, we get ill because we're laden down with negative emotional energies. So we need to start thinking about practices that allow us to release our emotions. You know, yoga, running, walking, it moves energy, it's moving emotions. But I think there's still it can still be a way of unconsciously doing it. And for me, emotion, you need to be aware, you need to hold that loving space like a parent for a child and be like, right, ooh, you're in a bad mood today. Okay, what's going to be good for you in this mood and what's going to make you more angry, you know? So yeah, it's just back to that reparenting and allowing your emotional expression to be okay by you. If you are shoulding and judging and shaming yourself for an emotional outbreak, there's just no love there for you, and it's not a safe place. So then that's when we numb and fragment and repress and just perpetuate these cycles of emotional repression. And it is a lack of emotional intelligence that I think we have, and I think is changing.
I think we're slowly changing that, yes, but it's something that takes time, right? I memean, the emotional body is still sort of like a mystery to most people, right?
She's a beast of her own doing. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, there are times when I'm like, you know, feel all the feels. But just to make that clear to people, you know, it was one of her readings with you when, you know, you sort of said to me, your natal chart is like a snapshot of all the pieces of the jigsaw. So for the pieces to fit where they fit, you have to have some nicer looking pieces, and then there's some darker looking pieces, and none of them are good or bad. for me, as I've started to embark more on an intuitive, psychic, spiritual experience, I've gone to some amazing places in meditation and through my devotional practice, through connecting with the divine. I have the depth to do that because of my sensitivity, because of my emotional capacity to feel and to connect from the heart.
Right. So if you weren't that sensitive, you didn't have those emotions, you wouldn't be able to do this connecting that you're doing. Yes. So there are pros and cons to all of it, right? Because I always say to people too, like with emotions too, if you weren't emotional, how can you have emotional connections with other people? You know, you cannot have an emotional bond or emotional connection with a pet or another human being or with your surroundings if you're not feeling anything. So not feeling anything is not actually a good thing, right? Because that just makes you robotic, you know, and then you're disconnected because you can't connect without feelings, right? You have to be able to, and the same is true for connecting with ourselves, right? We have to be able to feel ourselves in order to connect to ourselves, right? To just in and out. I mean, that's the connection there has to be an emotional component.
Yeah. One of the biggest, so one of the last sort of healing modalities I've been working with is emotional freedom technique, and it's tapping. And I have been sharing it with clients, but for me, it's been a revolution because it's using positive affirmations, which again, I think there can be an approach to sort of use them as like a whitewash. Oh, love and light, everything's great, I'm abundant. But unless you're willing to dig in, to pull out, so the analogy is like the weeds in the garden, unless you're really willing to look at the roots and the weeds to pull them out, you can't plant seeds of positive, I'm abundant, or whatever it is. You know, positive affirmations, they need to be bedded into your fundamental core and belief systems. So what I like about the tapping is you're saying, even though there's something negative, so you've got the negative proposition, you're acknowledging the weed, you're focusing on, you know, where you want it to move to, what do you want to happen. But the thing that I've noticed with clients that's been the most sad but bittersweet is just tapping and saying, even though I'm anxious, I honor and accept my feelings. And they're like, what? It's okay for me to feel that way. And then they really are like, when I say I completely love and accept myself, even though this shit things happened, I completely love and accept myself. They're then like, that was really hard to say. And again, it's emotionally supporting yourself.
Yes.
Giving yourself that big mama bear hug and saying, I'm with you all of the time. Yeah. And yes, you might do wrong things. Yes, you may do bad things. Yes, you may let yourself down. Yes, you may make life harder for yourself. Yes, you may think you should be dealing with these ridiculously difficult times in a better way. But I don't care about any of that because I got you, you know, and I'm going to support you through this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's been the real shift for me, that, again, I had to flip a switch with, I'm not going to keep chastising myself for not getting it right.
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can. And the only thing that feels good to me when I get things wrong is to be loved. You know, I have a 6-year-old nephew and he comes up a lot in my visualizations because I'm like, if I broke my phone, I can be a bit clumsy, but I completely destroyed a new phone in November. And and it was a proper idiot. I'd just bought it and I had to spend the money to replace it. And I noticed the narrative was just this complete, I've been swearing a lot, but it was a shit stream of just, you're a piece of shit. You're a stupid idiot. And I was like, whoa. And because I was like, if my nephew had come to me and said, Auntie Lizzie, I've broken your phone, there is no way I would talk to him like that. Yeah. So I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Yeah. And I just think we don't slow down enough to watch how we're responding to ourselves. You know, whether we've created our own drama and frustration or whether the world has kicked up, you know, some other thing for us to respond to. And that's the piece, is the pause. Yeah. Okay, how am I reacting? How am I supporting me? And therefore, how can I be of help, or even just be with other people in this coexisting? You don't actually owe anybody anything.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it takes practice, right? Being able to listen to our own inner voice and how we treat ourselves. It requires a witnessing, right? And that witnessing takes practice. You have to make time to learn how to become your own witness, right? For your feeling body, your mental body, your physical body. But it is so well worth doing. I mean, if you can actually practice that on a daily basis, and it doesn't even have to be like that you have to, make a time to practice it. You can just remind yourself throughout the day, like let me be my own witness, let me listen in on my own thinking, let me listen in on my feeling, let me listen in on what my body needs, right? And that practice is so powerful. It's really, really powerful.
Well, I was just going to say on that point, the interesting is it's generally your emotional body that's telling you something's off because you feel funny, for me anyway. Right. And then I'll be like, why am I feeling grumpy? Or why am I feeling knotted? Or why am I tense? Why am I just, And that's, again, engagement with the emotional body. Oh, what's going on for me?
Yes.
And why am I having this physical experience right now?
Yeah, your emotional body will always tick you off and to let you know like what's off and also what you need, right? Because we have, as human beings, we have needs, right? And I think the most profound need of all is the need for safety, right? Which I think is a huge need that people have. The need for control. People want to feel in control. They don't want to feel out of control. The need for approval, which is love, in the end. They want to feel either approved of them by themselves or by other people, or they want to feel loved, right? And then also the need for like feeling either connected or independent, right? Like where we feel like we can connect and be one with other people, or we can move away and be ourselves, right? That is sort of like a human need as well, to have both of these experiences. And I think these needs are very basic needs that obviously there are a lot of needs that you can have, but these are sort of like very basic ones. And when it comes down to having a feeling, you can always kind of like guide yourself back to like which one of these needs is not being met. Like, like which one of these very basic needs is not being met. And when you can get to that, and when you can acknowledge that, and I think acknowledging is that's what you do with the tapping, right? And the acknowledging is what I do with the Sedona method with my coaching, because it's all about just acknowledging what is so. It's not about judging it. It's not about changing it even. It's about just acknowledging that that's what's there, right? And so just understanding that, and that's why the witnessing is so powerful, because once you witness it and you see what's actually there, then you can acknowledge it and give it some space and allow yourself to just be there in the space with whatever is there. And that's powerful. And that creates a lot of
it discharges the trap.
Yes, it discharges the trap. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But I do want to say that we do have needs and engagements outside of ourselves, and that's part of being human. We are here to be in community and connect. But for me, being on quite an isolated soul experience, the more you love yourself and support yourself, the more you'll receive that and feel that from outside. And there is nothing more healing that I think we're actually seeking for than our own love and approval and acceptance. And that's what then leads to more supportive healing connections with other people, because we're not trying to heal a dysfunction with or through someone else, because we're holding space for ourselves with all our wonderful wounds and flaws and glorious uniqueness. So the more people can turn into supporting themselves with whatever practice, or tool works for them, that to me is the next step of this collective experience, is to stop looking from the outside in and to say, what can I give more to myself of that makes me feel loved?
I love that.
Safe.
I love that. Yes. And that is definitely the truth. I mean, because if each one of us can start doing that, just 5% more each day, then that will really be like a ripple effect into the collective, and will shift how we can be as a collective with each other. Absolutely. I agree.
But I know it's true because I felt extreme radical change in my life since I started doing this. And I don't say it glibly to be one of those spiritual love and light people. I really don't. Embodiment of like a loving spiritual practice has been the most revolutionary force of change in my life and in external relationships. But just to be at peace within me on the good days and the bad is the best gift I could have given myself.
Yeah, and being able to have peace with yourself is so powerful. Because ultimately, you are wherever you go, right? Wherever you're gonna go, whether you move across the country or you go to the dentist or you just at home with your loved ones, there you are, right? And so if you can't have peace within with yourself, then that's gonna impact every interaction that you have, every experience that you have, every connection, every conversation that you have, right? So it is very powerful. So yeah, it's a great goal to have and practice. It's a process, right? I mean, I think that we have to acknowledge also that it doesn't just happen overnight, right? Like it's a practice.
I think we create a learning experience to be able to give ourselves permission to love ourselves. I actually think it could happen at any time for anybody, but I think from what I've learned, I've needed certain steps, certain teachers, certain experiences to show me, to bring a light into the darkness of where I haven't been loving myself, where I have been judging myself, where I haven't believed I'm good enough for love. That's my personal, healing journey. So I've needed to create experiences in this lifetime to show a light. But ultimately, it was a very quick decision I made earlier this year. I am not going to disrespect myself anymore. I love myself no matter what. I love myself no matter what.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Maybe that would be my mantra in the morning. I love myself no matter what.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to take that on. No matter
It's
what.
magic. It's so simple.
Yeah, exactly. It's so simple. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So just to finish up, I just want to say one more time we're going to have a lot of information at the bottom of the video from your website,
Yeah.
Telegram, and there were three things
YouTube.
that you gave me. YouTube, that's it, yes. So YouTube,
Yeah.
Telegram, and your website. I'm going to have, so if anybody's interested in checking out who you are, what you do, they can click on those links. And again, it's
Yeah.
Embodied Spiritual Energy Coaching and Intuitive Guidance and Support with Liz Goulder, right? And if you're interested at all in doing astrology or astrology readings or coaching with me, it's astrologercoach.com. My information will also be underneath the video. And yeah, if anybody has any comments for us in terms of like questions that you want to ask Liz or that you want to ask me, feel free to leave comments underneath the video. I'm sure Liz doesn't mind. I certainly don't. And so it's always nice to kind of also have these interactions with people, even if it's after the fact, right? So, is there anything that you still want to say? One last words, Liz?
No, it's just been a pleasure to be here. Don't get me talking again, we'll go round. But yeah, and I really recommend Sonja's services and supports. She's been an invaluable mentor and coach for my journey. And yeah, just check her out. And yeah, again, choose what you want to bring in, where you want to spend your time and energy.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much. Such an honor talking to you. Always. I always love talking to you. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week and much love to you.